You know that feeling when your entire world stops? When everything you've built, every safety measure you've put in place, every prayer you've whispered into the darkness, it all crumbles in a single moment. I'm Sarah Mitchell, and I'm about to tell you about the day I watched my daughter stop breathing because of one woman's obsession with community standards. My daughter Emma is 7 years old. She has the most beautiful laugh you've ever heard, like wind chimes on a spring morning. She loves dinosaurs, refuses to wear anything that isn't purple, and she has a peanut allergy so severe that even trace amounts can kill her within minutes. We don't just avoid peanuts in our house. We've eliminated them from our existence. Every grocery trip takes 2 hours because I read every label 3 times. Every birthday party invitation fills me with dread. Every play date requires a 30-minute conversation with parents who sometimes look at me like I'm being dramatic. But I'm not being dramatic. I'm keeping my daughter alive. We moved to Willowbrook Estates 6 months ago, and I thought we'd found paradise. Tree-lined streets, friendly neighbors, a small park where Emma could play safely because I knew every family there. The homeowners association seemed strict, but I appreciated structure. Rules meant safety, or so I thought. I had no idea that rules could also mean tyranny when they're wielded by someone like Victoria Ashford. Victoria is the HOA president, and from day one, she made it clear that Willowbrook wasn't just a neighborhood. It was her kingdom. She's the type of woman who measures the exact height of your mailbox and leaves violation notices if it's half an inch off. She once fined the Hendersons $300 because their Christmas lights weren't historically appropriate for the architectural style. But I didn't care about any of that. I just wanted Emma to be safe. The trouble started with our community 4th of July barbecue. It's a mandatory event according to HOA bylaws. Yes, mandatory. I approached Victoria 3 weeks before, armed, with Emma's medical documentation, her emergency action plan from her allergist, and even a letter from her pediatrician, Dr. James Patterson, who happened to be one of the leading pediatric emergency medicine specialists in the country and lived just 2 blocks away. Victoria, I need to discuss the barbecue menu, I said, trying to sound diplomatic. Emma has a severe peanut allergy, and I noticed that last year's menu included several dishes with peanuts and peanut oil. Is there any way we could make the event nut-free, or at least have a designated safe zone? She looked at me the way you'd look at someone who just suggested burning down the neighborhood. Sarah, the 4th of July barbecue has followed the same tradition for 15 years. We serve Mabel Johnson's famous Thai peanut chicken skewers, Patricia's peanut butter pie, and Tom's Indonesian satay with peanut sauce. These are beloved recipes. I understand tradition is important, I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart. But this is literally life or death for Emma. Even cross-contamination could trigger anaphylaxis. I'm not asking you to cancel anything, just to consider alternatives, or let me know which dishes contain peanuts so we can avoid them. Victoria's smile was ice. Sarah, we cannot restructure an entire community event around one child's dietary restrictions. That would be unfair to everyone else. Perhaps Emma should sit this one out. It's a mandatory event, I reminded her. You fine people for non-attendance? Well then, I suggest you teach your daughter to be more careful. I should have seen it coming. I should have known that someone who valued tradition over a child's life was capable of anything. But I didn't. I actually believed that when the day came, basic human decency would prevail. The 4th of July arrived hot and bright. I'd spent the morning going over Emma's safety plan for the 100th time. Her 2 EpiPens were in my purse and in the backpack I'd carry. I'd given her Benadryl preventatively, something Dr. Patterson had advised against, except in extreme circumstances, but this felt extreme. I'd dressed her in a bright yellow shirt so I could spot her easily in the crowd. I held her hand so tight as we walked to the community park that she finally said, "Mommy, you're hurting me." "Sorry, baby." I loosened my grip but didn't let go. "We're just going to stay together today, okay?" Very close. The park was decorated in red, white, and blue. Families were already gathering, kids running through sprinklers, adults setting up folding chairs. I saw the food tables set up under a large pavilion, and my stomach dropped. There were at least 20 dishes, most unlabeled. I'd brought our own food, safe hot dogs, prepackaged chips, fruit I'd washed myself. We'd eat our own meal and just participate in the community aspect. "Sarah! Emma!" It was our neighbor Jennifer waving us over. "Come sit with us!" I relaxed slightly. Jennifer was kind, understanding about Emma's allergy. We'd had her family over for dinner twice, and she'd been meticulous about cleaning any trace of peanut products from her home before Emma visited. We joined their blanket, and for an hour, everything was fine. Emma played with Jennifer's son Tyler, staying within my sight. I watched the food tables like a hawk, making sure no one brought anything to our area. That's when I saw Victoria approaching with a tray, and on that tray were cookies. Beautiful, golden brown cookies that looked homemade. My entire body went cold. "I made these especially for the children," Victoria announced loudly, her voice carrying across nearby blankets. "Homemade peanut butter cookies. An old family recipe." She was walking directly toward Emma. "Victoria, no." I jumped to my feet, but she was faster. Before I could reach them, before I could stop what was about to happen, Victoria knelt down in front of Emma, her smile wide and terrifying, and said something I'll never forget. "You—" "No, little girl, your mother has been very difficult about food rules. I think it's time you learned that the world doesn't revolve around you." And then, as I screamed and ran toward them, as Jennifer gasped in horror, as Dr. Patterson looked up from his blanket 20 feet away, Victoria Ashford took one of those peanut butter cookies and forced it into my daughter's mouth. Time fractures in moments like these. 1 second you're living a normal life, and the next you're in a nightmare where every second is measured in your child's remaining heartbeats. I reached Emma just as she started choking, trying to spit out the cookie, her eyes already widening in panic as her body recognized the poison. "Emma!" I grabbed her, swept the cookie fragments from her mouth with my fingers, but I knew, God I knew, that some had already been swallowed. "It's okay, baby. Mommy's here. Mommy's got you." Her lips were already starting to swell. "Someone call." In 911, Jennifer was screaming, her phone already out. But I knew we didn't have time for 911. The nearest hospital was 15 minutes away, and Emma had maybe 5 minutes before her throat closed completely. My hands were shaking so violently, I could barely open my purse to grab the EpiPen. "What is happening?" Victoria's voice came from behind me, and she actually sounded annoyed, not concerned. Annoyed, like Emma's anaphylaxis was some sort of dramatic performance designed to embarrass her. "She's going into anaphylactic shock," I screamed at her. "You just killed my daughter!" Emma's breathing was becoming labored, a horrible wheezing sound that every parent of an allergic child knows and fears. Hives were erupting across her face and neck. Her hands went to her throat, that universal gesture that means, "I can't breathe." I jabbed the EpiPen into her thigh through her shorts, pressed it for the full 10 seconds, but I knew one EpiPen might not be enough. Not with direct ingestion. Not with this severe a reaction. "Mommy!" Emma's voice was barely a whisper, her lips turning blue. "Stay with me, baby. Stay with Mommy. You're going to be okay. You're going to be okay." I was lying. I didn't know if she was going to be okay. I didn't know anything except that I was watching my daughter suffocate, move. A commanding voice cut through the chaos, and then Dr. Patterson was there, his medical bag already in his hand. Later, I would learn that he never went anywhere without it, that years of emergency medicine had trained him to always be prepared. In that moment, he was literally a miracle delivered by fate. "How long since exposure?" he demanded, already assessing Emma with professional efficiency. "Maybe 90 seconds. I gave her EpiPen immediately." Did she swallow any? Yes, at least some. He was already pulling out a second EpiPen from his bag. "Her airway is compromising. We need to maintain it until the ambulance arrives. Jennifer, how far out are they?" 10 minutes, Jennifer shouted. 2 long. Dr. Patterson administered the second EpiPen, then pulled out a pediatric oxygen mask and placed it over Emma's face. He looked at me with steady, calm eyes that somehow made everything worse because I could see the fear he was professionally hiding. "Sarah, I need you to hold her hand and keep her calm. Talk to her, keep her conscious." I gripped Emma's small hand like it was the only thing tethering her to this world. Emma, baby, can you hear Mommy? I need you to stay awake for me, remember? The song we sing, our purple dinosaur song? Her eyes were starting to flutter closed. The hives had spread down her chest. Her breathing, even with the oxygen, sounded like she was trying to breathe through a straw that was getting smaller and smaller. Dr. Patterson was talking rapidly on his phone. I realized he was calling directly to the incoming ambulance, giving them advance warning, preparing them for what they'd find. 7-year-old female, severe anaphylaxis from peanut ingestion, 2 EpiPens administered, significant airway compromise, possible need for emergency intubation. The words felt like bullets. Intubation. That meant they might have to put a tube down her throat, or worse, an emergency cricothyrotomy, cutting into her throat to establish an airway. I'd read about these procedures during my many late-night research sessions about Emma's allergy. I'd prayed I'd never need to know about them in real life. Purple dinosaurs go stomp, 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 I sang, my voice breaking, tears streaming down my face. Through the jungle, romp, romp, romp. Emma's lips moved slightly. She was trying to sing with me. Oh God, my brave little girl was trying to sing. Behind me, I could hear Victoria's voice, defensive and rising in pitch. I didn't know. How was I supposed to know it would be this serious? She seems fine most of the time. Get away from us! I didn't even recognize my own voice, the primal rage that erupted. You don't get to speak! You don't get to make excuses! Dr. Patterson's hand was on my shoulder, firm. Sarah, I need you focused on Emma. Only Emma right now. He was right. I turned back to my daughter, whose face was now so swollen she barely looked like herself. Emma, stay with me. The ambulance is almost here. You're going to hear the sirens soon, okay? Just like the sirens you love to hear when we watch the fire trucks. As if summoned by my words, I heard it. The distant wail of an approaching ambulance. It had been maybe 4 minutes, but it felt like hours. Emma's oxygen saturation was dropping. I could see Dr. Patterson checking the small monitor he'd clipped to her finger, his jaw tightening. Come on, Emma, he muttered. Stay with us, just a little longer. The ambulance screamed into the park and suddenly there were paramedics everywhere. But instead of relief, I felt new terror because of the look that passed between Dr. Patterson and the lead paramedic. A look that said, "This is worse than we hoped." We need to transport now, the paramedic said. Dr. Patterson, are you able to accompany? Yes. He looked at me. Sarah, right up front. I'll be in back with Emma and the team. They were loading my daughter onto a stretcher, her small body looking impossibly fragile under the straps and surrounded by medical equipment. The last thing I saw before they closed the ambulance doors was Emma's hand. Still clutching the small, purple stuffed dinosaur she'd brought to the barbecue, and Dr. Patterson's face, intense with concentration, as he prepared for the worst, as we pulled away, sirens blaring. I saw Victoria standing in the crowd, her face pale, and something else I didn't understand then but would later. She was on her phone, but she wasn't calling to check on Emma. She was calling her lawyer. The pediatric emergency room at Memorial Hospital was a place I'd hoped never to see. Emma was rushed into a trauma bay immediately, and I was stopped at the door by a nurse who kindly but firmly told me I had to wait outside while they worked. Dr. Patterson, however, stayed with her, his credentials allowing him access where my maternal desperation could not. I collapsed into a waiting room chair, and that's when the full shock hit me. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. Jennifer arrived within minutes, having followed the ambulance, and she held me while I sobbed. She forced it into her mouth, I kept repeating. She looked Emma in the eyes and forced her to eat something that could kill her. Who does that? What kind of person does that? A criminal, Jennifer said firmly. Sarah, I recorded it. My head snapped up. What? She held up her phone with trembling hands. I was filming Tyler playing when it happened. I got everything. Victoria approaching. What she said, her forcing the cookie into Emma's mouth, everything. Later, when I watched that video, I would see something I'd missed in the moment. The look on Victoria's face. It wasn't ignorance or an accident. It was deliberate. It was punishment. She had decided to teach Emma a lesson about not being special. And she'd weaponized a cookie to do it. Dr. Patterson emerged after 45 minutes that felt like 45 years. His face was exhausted, but miraculously, he was almost smiling. "She's stable," he said, and I collapsed into sobs of relief. "It was close, Sarah. Very close. We had to intubate her to protect her airway, but she's breathing on her own now through the tube. She'll need to stay intubated for probably 24 hours to ensure the swelling goes down safely, and she'll be in the ICU for at least 3 days for monitoring, but she's going to survive." "Can I see her?" "Soon. They're getting her settled in the ICU now." He sat down next to me, suddenly looking every bit as shaken as I felt. "Sarah, in 20 years of pediatric emergency medicine, I have never seen someone deliberately expose an allergic child to their allergen. Never. This wasn't an accident or ignorance. What Victoria did was assault, possibly attempted murder." "I'm pressing charges," I said immediately. "Good, you should. And I'll testify. I witnessed the entire thing and my medical records will document everything." He paused. "There's something else you should know. When the police come to take your statement, and they will, you need to tell them that Victoria made a comment to me last week." "What comment?" His jaw tightened with anger. "She asked me, as a medical professional, if children's allergies were real or mostly in the parents' heads. She said she thought parents were too coddling these days, and that exposure therapy, meaning deliberately exposing kids to allergens, was probably what they needed. I told her, in no uncertain terms, that she was completely wrong and that such thinking was dangerous. I even gave her literature about food allergies. She threw it away in front of me. The horror of it settled over me like ice water. She planned this. I believe she did, and that makes it so much worse. The police arrived within the hour. I gave my statement. Jennifer gave hers and turned over the video. Dr. Patterson provided his eyewitness account and his expert medical testimony. 3 other neighbors came forward with statements about Victoria's comments about Emma's allergy in the weeks leading up to the incident. Comments like, "That child needs to learn the world isn't peanut-free," and "the mother is neurotic." Victoria Ashford was arrested that evening. The charges were aggravated assault, reckless endangerment of a child, and when the prosecutor reviewed the evidence, the premeditation, the comments, the deliberate act of forcing the cookie into Emma's mouth, they added attempted murder. I stayed by Emma's bedside for 3 days straight. When they finally removed the breathing tube and she whispered, "Mommy," it was the most beautiful sound I'd ever heard. The swelling went down. The hives faded. My daughter survived. But the Emma who came home from the hospital was different. She was quieter, more afraid. She had nightmares about the lady who hurt her. We started therapy, both of us, to process the trauma. The criminal trial took 7 months. Victoria's defense was exactly what you'd expect. She claimed she didn't know about the allergy, that I had never told her, that it was all a terrible accident. But Jennifer's video proved otherwise. The audio captured Victoria saying, "I think it's time you learned that the world doesn't revolve around you," before forcing the cookie into Emma's mouth. Dr. Patterson's testimony about her previous comments established premeditation. The other neighbors' statements established a pattern of behavior. The jury deliberated for 3 hours. Guilty on all counts. Victoria Ashford was sentenced to 5 years in prison, with a possibility of parole after 3. She was also ordered to pay $275,000 in medical bills, emotional distress damages, and therapy costs. The HOA itself faced a civil lawsuit, which they settled for an undisclosed amount. The bylaws were rewritten to explicitly protect residents with medical conditions and disabilities. We moved out of Willowbrook Estates 3 months after Emma came home from the hospital. I couldn't bear to see that park, that pavilion, the place where I almost lost my daughter. Emma is 9 now. She still loves dinosaurs. She still refuses to wear anything that isn't purple. She carries her EpiPens in a special purple case decorated with a T-Rex. She's braver than I ever could be, and every single day I'm grateful that Dr. Patterson happened to be at that barbecue. Every single day I'm grateful for those 2 EpiPens that bought us time. Every single day I'm grateful my daughter is alive, but I'm also angry. I'm angry that we live in a world where someone's pride and obsession with rules and tradition mattered more than a child's life. I'm angry that it took a near-death experience and a criminal trial for people to take food allergies seriously. So I'm telling this story not just as catharsis, but as a warning. If you know someone with a food allergy, especially a child, please listen to their parents. Please believe them when they say it's serious. Please don't test it, don't dismiss it. Don't decide that your preferences matter more than their safety. Because one cookie, one deliberate act of cruelty, one moment of teaching a lesson almost killed my daughter. And I will spend the rest of my life making sure people understand that food allergies aren't drama, aren't coddling, aren't negotiable. They're life and death, and Emma's life is worth protecting.